At my family's quiet Sunday check-in, I noticed something was wrong long before anyone said a word. The chairs were arranged in a neat line facing me, not in the usual circle we used for conversation. My son and daughter-in-law sat together with polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. I placed my mug down gently, pretending not to feel the shift in the air. It was supposed to be a simple catch-up, something we had kept up after my husband passed, a way to stay connected. But as I watched them straighten their tablets and avoid small talk, I felt a stillness settle around us. "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end, and let me know where you're watching from." That morning had begun so peacefully. I opened the windows to let in the soft breeze drifting through our neighborhood. I made coffee the old way, slow, steady, the way my husband liked it. I even baked a small blueberry loaf, a recipe we used to share on quiet weekends. I set the table with care, hoping we would talk about normal things, garden plans, Lily's college classes, maybe even a few memories we hadn't touched in a while. But when they walked in 5 minutes early, their expressions were rehearsed, not warm. My daughter-in-law was the first to speak. She folded her hands neatly, her ring catching a ray of sunlight. "Before we start," she said lightly, "there's something we should look over." She turned her tablet toward me. The house deed was on the screen. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. The text looked familiar, but it was arranged differently. Then my eyes landed on the line where my name should have been. It wasn't there. Just a blank, empty space, as if I had never been part of this home. My son didn't look up. My daughter-in-law offered a small, sympathetic smile, the kind people use when they want to soften something sharp. "We updated things to make everything easier," she said. "Less for you to worry about. Less for me. Easier for them." I didn't argue. I nodded, as though my name being removed from the deed of the house I had spent 35 years paying off was nothing more than a typo. Inside, a quiet calm rose, not panic, not anger, just a clarity I hadn't expected. When they left, the blueberry loaf was still untouched on the counter. I wrapped it carefully, placed it in the refrigerator, and walked through the house as the sun shifted through the blinds. I paused in doorways, touching the backs of chairs, lingering by the windows my husband used to watch birds from. The walls held memories they couldn't erase, not with signatures, not with revised documents. The house felt different now, but not in the way they intended. If anything, it felt more mine than ever. Later that day, I opened my husband's old wooden box. Inside were papers, insurance statements, letters, receipts, and at the very bottom, our original property documents. My name was right there in clear, firm ink. His handwriting marked the edges of the pages. Notes like "paid in full finally" and "for us" brought a sting behind my eyes. The good kind, the kind that reminds you someone once cared enough to make a mark. The next morning, I laid everything out on the kitchen table. The old deed, the receipts, the handwritten notes. I brewed coffee and sat quietly reviewing each page. That's when there was a soft knock at the door. It was Mrs. Talbot from next door, carrying a small container of warm chicken soup. "I saw your kids leave yesterday," she said gently. "Everything all right?" I invited her in. She sat with me, drinking tea while her eyes drifted to the papers without prying. "If you need anything," she said before leaving, "just knock." After she left, I took a deep breath and finally opened the folder my son and daughter-in-law had left behind. The signature on the updated deed was supposed to be mine. But I had signed enough papers in my life to know my own pen strokes. The loops were wrong, the angle off, the pressure uneven. A stranger's hand had written my name. Truth doesn't scream. It settles quietly like dust on a windowsill. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That afternoon, my granddaughter Lily arrived unexpectedly. She hugged me longer than usual, then sat across from me as her eyes flicked to the stack of papers. "Dad said the meeting went fine," she said, "but he looked guilty." I didn't need to say anything. She saw everything in my face. "Grandma," she whispered, brushing her fingers along the margin of my husband's will, He always kept his promises. We spent hours going through the documents together. Lily helped me organize them, old, new, real, forged. She found dates that didn't match. She found forms that should have required my signature. She found inconsistencies my son and daughter-in-law hoped I would never notice. At one point she looked up and said, "What they did isn't right. You know that, right?" I nodded. A small, steady motion. That evening, after she left, I stood in the hallway and touched the frame of the photo from the year my husband planted the oak tree in the backyard. He'd written the date on the back in blue pen. His handwriting had always been certain, the opposite of the shaky signature they tried to pass as mine. The house was quiet again as dusk came in. But it wasn't the same quiet as before, not a lonely quiet, a knowing quiet. In the stillness, I organized everything into a single large envelope. Every truth, every memory, every proof. I placed it in my handbag and hung the bag near the door. Not because I planned to leave, but because I planned to act. Before bed, I walked to the backyard and rested my hand on the oak tree. Its roots had held through years of storms. Its branches reached upward, steady and patient. "I'm still here," I whispered to it. "I'm not going anywhere." And neither was the truth. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and like the video to support more stories like this. For the full story and more everyday family journeys, visit HT Everyday Family Stories. Link in the description.